Okay, it's dark now. I'm gonna try this again. I got 5 bars. I'm in an area. Decided to go by the rich area. I know they got good reception over there. So, I guess my message is really to America, parents across America, the youth of America in these colleges and high school, and kids going through this stuff with the LGBTQ being pushed down their throat by the Democrats. You know, I haven't made videos in a while, and I guess it's time I start again. You know, I've been I'm still in recovery from COVID, pretty much lost everything as a result of COVID. Still haven't been able to get back from it, and it's just been a slow pace forward. So this is where we are, right? I'm sure I'm not alone. There's millions of Americans all went through it as well, so I'm not alone. But the thing of what it is I want to talk about is, like I said, we lost a great man, Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk's message was all about, you know, our Lord Christ and America, principles and values, our founding principles, and just a state of reality. You know, a lot of people are making videos about him saying, you know, about his opinion and this, that. Let me tell you something. Like I state, anybody who's watched my videos on YouTube, I always say, look, you know, what I'm stating is something I've done a lot of due diligence on and research, and it's not my opinion, it's what the facts conclude, even I can't deny. And that was the same with Charlie Kirk. He didn't really state his own opinion, he stated what he knew, the facts, made clear it was the truth. And he gave everybody a fair and equal opportunity to debate him and disagree with him and present their own facts if they thought what he was saying wasn't true. And you know, his thing was trying to wake up America, wake up the youth, and try and give people a dose of reality that would jar them back into just that, reality. And, you know, I think about mostly his concern was with what we see right now, the effects of what it was with him. The guy who shot and killed Charlie Kirk was involved with a transgender, was somebody who pulled out from college after just 1 semester, I understand. And was quickly corrupted and indoctrinated by college into that lifestyle, and this is the end result of what happens. You know, I've been studying world cultures, histories my whole life, and it's something I've had a passion about all my life, and all I really care about is the truth. And my understanding of things is kind of like Charlie Kirk's. I'm self-educated in everything I know, and you know, I put a lot of time into my study of things, and I know it well. And one of the things with Charlie Kirk, and in relation to what we see going on right now, you know, I see it. I see it with so many people, parents and their kids going off to these colleges and being indoctrinated like this and coming back totally different people. The colleges encouraging these people involved with this LGBTQ, telling them their families are enemies and what have you, and not to trust them. And, you know, if they go back to their family's going to reject them and this, that, and everything. And, you know, and they're really putting parents in a hard spot because they're always going to love their children. And it's sad. It's just sad. I've seen too much of it in the last decade. It's just really gotten out of line. The Democrats have jammed this stuff down their throats, and they've aimed now at our children for the last 5-6 years really hard with this whole LGBTQ plus pedophilia stuff, and it's just disgraceful what is going on in this country. But to reach the parents and the kids, I mainly want to talk to you kids about history. And like Charlie Kirk, I'm going to challenge you. Just like I do in all my other videos I made on YouTube. I'll challenge you. If what I'm saying is not the truth, you let me know. You know, because here's the deal. You know, when you look at ancient history even, and that's what I'm saying, it goes back to ancient history. The pharaohs of Egypt knew about this. The Babylonians knew about it. You know, Cyrus the Great's era, you know, they knew about it. The Greeks knew about it. And it was this, you know, what it was like. I'm just going to give you a brief understanding of something. You know, the schools and these people on the left, and sadly to say, these schools indoctrinate and license psychologists. And the psychologists even today, maybe some are aware. I would think the ones who are aware and ignore looking at this is probably the ones who are Democrats and know exactly what they're doing in the attempt to try and just destroy society. They're on board with it. They're just sick psychopaths. And there's nothing you can do with such people. But, you know, in the ancient times, I remember at one time, you know, Plato was a man who had a lot of theory about things. And today, back then, they didn't call it what we call it today. Today, we call it inherent memory. And us as adults, we remember, you know, when you look at your kids, this is where you can reflect on seeing it. When you look at your kids, like I look at my oldest son, and I realize, you know, he has certain cliques and traits about him. There's no denying he's my son, because it's like the same things I did when I was a kid. It's inherent in him from me. You know, you have children, they do certain things, they have certain facial expressions, they act certain ways. It's inherent in them from their parents. You know, and what I'm going to talk about was one of the guys who was a student of, who was his, Aristotle, I think it was a student of his, and there was a girl, the story I remember reading, I was about 15, I read all about this story. She was being told by like witch doctors that she was, you know, she had these visions and dreams she was having, past lives. And well, this student was fascinated with the whole concept of past lives and all that, and he started studying it. And she had this repetitive dream that was a horrible dream about like a war scene of a murder going on with mass people, blood and whatever. It was very gross. And this is back in like the medieval times, you know what I mean? It's an ancient history time. And, you know, she was being convinced by like these crazy witch doctors or whatever that she's lived past lives and this and that. She was, of course, a wealthy person at that time, so they were capitalizing on taking advantage of her with these dreams that, you know, she was paying them for their so-called wisdom of visions and whatever. Well, this student of Aristotle, I think it was Aristotle, it might have been Plato, I'm not really sure. I think it was Plato, it might have been that far back in Greek because it was in the Greek era what was happening. And he had done studies, he started speaking with her family. And one of the things he realized was that the story she was telling and speaking with her grandfather, he told this student who was in the study of theories of this thing about a war scene that his whole life that he remembers from when he was younger in a battle. And it was very, very much the same of what this girl's dream was about. And he had realized that this girl didn't live past lives. She inherited the memories, the horror of an event that happened with her grandfather through her parents. And it's called inherent memory. And these things happen. We know today there's studies on inherent memory, but they don't go as in deep. I mean, anyone who indulges deeply into the Greek philosophers about this is going to see that this was very well documented and thought about and studied back in ancient times. And even in modern times, because I do remember talking about this with my principal at my high school, Dr. Zeeland, when I was younger. I wasn't even out of high school yet, talking to him about what I was reading about these things. And he was fascinated by it because he had a doctorate in psychology, and he claimed he'd never heard of it. So that kind of shocked me that here I am reading about something, this guy's got a doctorate in psychology and never heard about inherent memory from ancient Greece and about how it transfers into kids. Well, anyway, my story, what I'm trying to get across, not the story, but what the facts of it are. You know, you have the LGBTQ and the Democrats and all these people who are sick perverts, really. I mean, I grew up in Newark. I've seen a lot of stuff as a kid growing up. I was a victim to some of it as well. And fortunately for me, I had an older brother who knew very well, very street smart, and how to deal with it. We grew up really poor in Newark, New Jersey, and it was not a good place at the time in the 60s and 70s. It was one of the worst cities in the nation at that time, the most violent, criminal, infested, poverty-ridden cities at the time. And I've seen a lot of ugly stuff as a kid. My brother helped me get through a lot of things. And in a way, the things I would learn in life through my own study of history and the things that I'm talking about helped me understand better, too, how to deal with them and how to change my own being from, like how to discard all of society's misleads and associate them to the realities of what I come to understand. And that's what I want to get across to the parents and the students and kids that are being affected with this LGBTQ agenda. Here's something I want you to consider. If you're a boy and you feel like a girl, and you're asking yourself, you know, you feel like you see a boy, another boy, and he's attractive to you, or you're a girl and you see another girl and she's attracted to you. You know, I've spoken, like I say, this is not something just from theory. I've put these things to practice in my own life and helping people or talking with people who come to me and like maybe had problems similar to that. And, you know, because of life experience, I've had one time worked with a church and with people at a church and helping their kids cope with certain things like molestation and things like that and dealing with pedophilia and stuff like that. You know, so I mean, I understand it not only from knowledge but wisdom. And you know, what I can tell you is, like, what it is not, you know, we are born with the inherent memories, the tics, the desires, the same responsive actions of our parents. It's inherent in us. So when you find yourself looking at a boy, and you're thinking that boy's attractive, and you are a boy, well, there's nothing really wrong with that. I mean, like me, when I look at Elvis Presley, I think, man, I wish I looked like Elvis Presley. That guy was great looking, you know, and that's that kind of thing. But if you're saying it's on a sexual nature, more than likely what it is you're tapping the inherent memory of your mother's side, the feminist side. You know, every man has the both, you know, and by what you're influenced by is what is going to drive you to what of your inherent memory are you going to allow your focus to be on. They figured that it was the guy during the time, too, there was another theologist who thought about a lot of these things. He had read about the study I'm talking about with this student, and it was during the time of Greece when they had the big outbreak of homosexuality, and he noticed that the homosexuality rise in Greece with it, and the perversions and the pedophilia all rose up very strongly right after a major Greek war, in where the majority of the Greek men were slaughtered and killed. And it left many tens of thousands of the Greek children, sons, fatherless, and they had nothing but the mothers to count on. And being around the mothers and constantly with the mothers triggered the inherent memory of the mother and gave them all the feminist kind of uprise in them, you know, to feel like the mother. So they had, you know, it was confusing for them because there were boys who were being, I guess in a way, subjective to that of inherent memories of their mother, which are feminine and female, and it would confuse them. And that's what a lot of you kids today are going through. You think you're a girl, but if you're a boy and you think you're a girl, it's not. If you find you know, and then also too, there's a lot of like the traits of it. I've learned in the past, I've spoken with people, I've always tried to come to understand these things. And I share with people stories about things that I've experienced with people who are gay or what have you, lesbian or whatever, and what I've come to realize with some who I feel like I got no place to judge, and others I kind of feel like I understand how it happened, and some of them that, you know, they've changed. They come around and they realized that they were just very confused, and they were drawing on the wrong inherent memory, and they were allowing the manipulation of others who wanted them to go that way to let them play off those inherent memories of, say, if it was a boy who feels like he's a girl and it was his mother. By wanting to find that, you will lead yourself to the inherent memory of the feminist side, and you will allow it to dominate you, and you're just confused though. You're just confused. If you look up inherent memory, you'll find that the inherent memory is there, and you don't realize as a boy, if you're feeling like a girl, you know, when you look at hormones especially too, if you reach in puberty and you have hormones on top of it raging, sexual hormones, gratification, the desire to engage is one of the strongest driving forces in humans. I mean, you know, it's a thing that, you know, God wanted us to populate. He wanted us to propagate. And that desire to keep the human race going was inherent in us. It's very strong. It's a very strong emotion. So hitting puberty on top of it, if you're confused and being confounded, and you're kind of exploring your inherent memory, and you're into that side of the wrong side, it's very easy to fall off and make that mistake. And that's what you're doing. You're relying on if you're a boy and you think you're a girl, you're relying too much like on your feminist inherent memory of your mother, or it even could be your grandmother. And then sometimes, like, some things are inherent, you know, we know that, like alcoholism is inherent. Certain drug addictions are inherent. Certain habits, smoking, such and such, are inherent. Okay, if your parents did these things. And the same thing would be with sex. So if you had maybe, it could have been your father, it could have been your grandfather, it could have been your grandmother, somebody who maybe had been molested, somebody who had maybe explored making the same mistake and was feeding into the other side of their inherent memory to that of the opposite of what their actual sexual gender is, and they were making mistakes and engaging in that kind of lifestyle, and you are inheriting that memory and somehow allowing that memory to dictate what you're going to do and what you're going to feel. But the reality is, if you're born a boy, you're a boy. If you're born a girl, you're a girl. It's that simple. And a lot of people, it's amazing to me when I watch in the last couple of years, with people trying to define things like, what is a woman? This is so ridiculous, what is a woman? And for people to say it's a modern construct of sexualization or what have you. I heard the student say it's just a modern construct of sexualization, a term used modern time. No, it's not. I got news for you. It dates back 8,000 years of what we know in written text. In the Bible, God created Adam, he created him, and then he created Eve, he created her. Male and female, he created them. Male and female. So, I mean, this dates back forever. Okay? There is no, and this is undeniable. Every species has a male and female. And in America, under what like Charlie Kirk was saying too, you know, we're a very Christian nation, and we established this nation by our Declaration of Independence on the natural law. And the natural laws, you can't defy the natural laws. And when we say, well, you know, like I look at some of the things with James Madison, the father of one of the fathers of our Constitution, who wrote the Constitution and Federalist Papers, very, very incredibly smart man. We don't realize how genius the foundings of our country were. Like George Washington was an incredible historian. He knew so much about the world wars and history. It was incredible. He was not just some farmer guy who decided to be the general of the Patriot Army for the Revolutionary War. He was a very intelligent, smart man, and they all were. You know, they were very well aware of world history and what they were doing, and they understood the construct of what all in history had been about that had caused people to be enslaved under totalitarian regimes and superior rulers and elitists and what have you, how they fell into that. And then even with that, like you look at China, I remember a few years ago having this discussion with somebody to talk about inherent memory. And, you know, he was saying, he was somebody who came here from China, and he was saying about how in China, you know, there's billions of people, and he doesn't understand why they tolerate the Communist Party and the dictatorship like it is in China, when it'd be so easy for them to rise up and take it over. And I said, you know, back with when you studied the inherent memory thing, this goes back to the time of Egypt. And there was writings back on these the scrolls of Egyptians that were left behind to give direction to that of their posterity, their kids, to continue on with their rule and how they would rule the world and how they would stay and maintain control. And they talked about the sense of how the Jews, during the time when they were slaves, that it would take X amount of generations to where the next generation would be born without resistance to being a slave. It would inherit the comfort of slavery from its parents. And they were right. That's why the Jews remained slaves for 400 years. It took somebody to be born and rise up and tell them that this is not right. But for 400 years, after a few generations, the children being born into it were born into acceptance of it. And then their children were just born without any resistance and total acceptance of it. It was inherent. So understand the influence of inherent memory can be very dangerous to you and can deprive you of your life. And you kids that are young and you're thinking of like transitioning and having surgery, look, you need to really do your due diligence. Candace Owens has a few videos with people who did transgender conversions, and I myself knew of one that was in St. Pete down here from a customer of mine that committed suicide. And you know, sadly, I kind of remember I spoke with that person because my customer had asked me, you know, we were talking, and I tried to speak to the guy, but he had gone through the full surgery, and it was a disaster because he realized he was not really a woman. It was all fake, you know. There was nothing real about it. I mean, he had, you know, the vagina was not real. It was just actually a wound in his body that he had to keep an inflated object in it so it didn't close and heal up. And you know, the boobs, of course, were fake, and there was no sexual gratification with him. His organs were destroyed in the surgery, and he had realized, you know, that everything on the outside was just makeup and like a costume, and by the time he realized what a disastrous mistake he made, it was too late to undo. And sadly, he took his own life. And that's what happens to a lot of people. And the Democrats seem to be totally unconcerned with this loss of life and how it affects people. And like what we're seeing right now, how it's affecting the medications they're putting these kids on and how it mentally affects them. It makes them very unstable, suicidal, and psychopath. Really, it makes them psycho. And it's just horrible what we see going on across the country. It's horrible for the families whose kids come home. Because what do you do? What do you do when your child walks in and it's your son and he says, Dad, I think I'm a girl? You know, and you can try, but you know, too, if these people groom them in such a way, and you kids know this, those groups are telling you that if your parents reject you, don't worry, you come back to... Believe me, let me tell you something. The people behind this, the doctors, the psychologists, the teachers involved are all with the Democratic Party. And it's a sick, demented, inhumane people that are doing this to children. These people are inhumane, disgusting, evil, godless people, what they're doing. I mean, and these doctors that are doing these surgeries on these children are Frankenstein doctors who should have their license stripped from, they should be put in prison. It should be criminal what they're doing. They should be in prison. This is like Frankenstein doctors. Because, and then the people who are supporting this, I want you parents to listen to me, and I want you kids that are going through this issue, I want you to listen to me and understand something. This is reality. Just to understand this. If you want to know what a woman is, and what's the difference between a woman and a man, it's very easy. Male and female, the whole shebang of it. I've been through this so many times my whole life. I understand it really clearly since I was a kid. And, you know, and weirdly, it was my oldest brother with the concept of these things that he was able to, even with his own life, he had horrible events in his own life. He was raised very street, very tough city street, and, you know, he was in Jamesburg, and I mean, he had to deal with some major issues as well. And it was amazing how he was able to cope with it and get through with it with his own self-seeking understanding. But you got to understand something. There is no way a man who is born a man can become a woman. It's totally impossible. Don't listen to them. They're lying to you. They will, if you're a boy and you want to be a girl, they're going to cut off your sexual organs and they're going to put a wound in you. Be careful. Look and talk and watch, because there's other transgenders who have gone through this. Many who have committed suicide, but many who are still alive. There's one boy who did this. That was with Candace Owens. He did the video, and he told her all about the hell of what it is to deal with the inner reality of what now he understands could never be. You know, if you want to know what the difference is between what is a woman, this is a question that seems everybody seems to have a hard time understanding and answering. Let me tell you, a woman is this part of the species who can conceive and bear a child, who has breasts that produce nurturing milk for the child. She's a female. She's a female because a male and female, it doesn't just apply to humans. That's like an adjective. You guys talk about your nouns, your pronouns, but it's an adjective. It's about an action. You see, like there's a nut and a bolt. The nut is the male. The bolt is the female. The nut goes into the bolt. That's why male and female have nothing to do with man or woman. It's just about the adjective of the action, what's involved here. And you kids got to understand that. This applies to many different things. Sockets in the wall. The plug is the male. The socket in the wall that it goes into is the female. You know, these things are referred to in an action of like an adjective, not a noun. And that's what male and female are. And that's why a woman is the female, because the male goes into her. She has the socket, he has the plug. I mean, this is how it works. And these things are undeniable. They're self-evident in nature. And these are set by the laws of nature. It's just the way it is. And if you're confused and you're a boy and you think you're a girl, like I said, understand, you have the inherent desires and memories and likes and habits of that of both your mother and father. If you're looking and you're a boy and you see another boy that's attractive, it goes back to the state of like, one of the things they notice in something of psychological study is that many girls seem to be attracted to men who look like their father. And some people say, oh, it's a father syndrome thing, you know, but it's not. They inherit the same attractive habit as that of their mother. And of course, their mother finds men like her father attractive. And if they inherit that same attractive inherent nature, then of course that's what they're going to see as attractive as well. You see, it's all inherent. And if I don't recall much ever having like thoughts of other men or anything like that, but had I ever, I would know from my understanding of these things that, oh, you know, if I, like, for instance, I mean, like I say, I don't know if the earlier video I said, if I see like Elvis Presley, I would say to him, oh man, that guy's good looking, he looks great, I wish I looked like him, you know, he's a really handsome guy, you know, or whatever. But then if I seen something where it's different, like I'm looking at a guy thinking, wow, he's good looking, I would think to myself in my head, probably my mother would think he's good looking, because that's where that's got to be coming from. I'm not attracted to men, you know. And that's what you got to understand as a boy who thinks you're a girl. You're drawing on your mother's inherent memory that's in you. And if you're a girl and you're finding women attractive, look at that woman and ask yourself, what is the resemblance of her and your mother? Because more than likely, your inherent attraction to her might be your father's. And you're seeing through like his inherent desires, his inherent, what he finds attractive. And you're feeling his attraction, his inherent attraction to that look or that certain kind of woman that he, you know, you inherited his, and you're confusing it with yours. We all have to come to a point, and you're young. You got to understand you're young. You're just growing up. Puberty is a very confusing point in life. Until you hit puberty, really, you don't know anything about your genders or anything like that, that's not true either, because you're inherently born to want to instinctively engage in sexual relations. Propagation is the goal, you know, and you know that's how it goes. But you young kids are being so confounded and confused by sick pedophile perverts that are running these schools and institutions, and the majority of them that are in the Democratic Party that are totally delusional nuts. Like, you look at the guy Tim Walz, who almost ended up being our vice president. To think we nearly had a person like this elected into office is insane in this country. Because when you look at this guy was putting tampons in boys' rooms for transgender boys who want to be girls. Like, aiding the delusion of unreality that they're never going to have a period. They're not really girls. Even if they went through the full surgery, they're not going to have a period. They're not going to be able to conceive a child. They're not really a woman. Okay? They're just a mutilated boy who's wearing a costume. And the same goes the other way. Now, the sad part is, if you're somebody who has gone through this, and you've already done all this, and you're waking up to the reality, listen to me. You know, because there's so many of you right now, and I know it's confusing, and you're thinking the worst, you know, like there's just no way to fix this. There's no way back. But listen, Jesus loves you. Okay, God loves you. God made you the way you were, and you made a mistake. And that mistake was probably influenced by a lot of sick, evil, perverted people. And if you've gone through the full transition and you're awakening to the reality that how fake it all is, and you're thinking of taking your own life, don't do this. Don't do that. Understand this. If you can turn yourself over to God, and you know, this is what Charlie Kirk was trying to tell you. If you can turn yourself over to God, and you can accept Jesus and understand it and take a little time to learn, what you've done to yourself doesn't matter. It's what you do with what you've done. And you can become a vessel for God to help stop it happening to someone else. No matter how angry or bitter or disappointed you feel in yourself, understand this: you are still who you are, that God made you. And no matter what you've done to yourself, you can still pull and reflect out of yourself who God made you. And you can be that person in spite of any mistake you made. And you'll be accepted for who you really are by everyone. Everyone. Your family will love you. You can redeem yourself. Because trust me, whatever you do to this body here doesn't matter. Because when you leave here to go to be with the Lord, you don't take it with you. So it doesn't matter. There are people out there, like there's a video of a guy who I think is so inspirational. If you look it up on YouTube, it's called No Arms, No Legs. He was born with no arms and no legs. And he is such a minister for Christ. It's incredible. And when you look at him and you say to yourself, you know, if you're thinking to yourself, God, look what I've done to myself. Look what I have left to work with. Look at him and see what faith in Christ and the Lord and God can do for you. And don't do the worst, because it's a thing that you can't undo. You know, that's the sad thing with Charlie Kirk. This kid, what he did was different to had he, it would have been better if he just would have come up and argued with him. If he felt he was right in his thing, he could have presented his facts. But he did something that's irreversible. You see, that once you do, you can't undo it. And there's a destined point in your life. All of us in life, we will be, I've faced so many obstacles and hard times in life. And believe me, I know I've seen hard times where the thoughts have crossed my mind. But there's one thing I realize. There's coming a day by God and where my expiration number is up. And there's nothing I can do about it. And no matter what this world does to me, no matter how hard life becomes, I'm going to keep struggling on. I'm going to keep trying to find a way until it's totally, totally hopeless. And my time comes naturally by God. I'm going to try to make it to that point, no matter what. And you should too. And you can utilize whatever bad or whatever, you know, I one time, I'm not going to say who, it was a case thing, like a thing, somebody at this church I was part of, and they had a son that was confused, and, you know, he thought he was gay and what have you, and the family was very Christian, and it was a kind of a shock to them. And of course the schools were encouraging this, and this was even back as early as like 2000, I think it was 2008, and the minister had asked me if I would take a little time, maybe talk with the kid. So, you know, I did. I spent some time with this kid, and we talked, and come to find out, it stemmed out from molestation. He had been being molested from the time when he was like 8 years old till he was 10 at a place where they prior lived, and his family knew nothing about it. The hard part about it was the guy who molested him would sometimes still visit the family. He was one of the father's closest friends. Very hard situation. And he, you know, I remember when it finally broke through with him, and like I told him, you know, you can't hold yourself accountable for what other people will do to you. You know, what that guy did was took advantage of a young kid, totally confused, didn't know what was going on, didn't even understand, hadn't even reached puberty yet, had no idea what was going on, you know. And once he understood that it was in no way his fault, you know, and there was no way it will have an effect on his life, that, you know, he could change those things, and he could discard those things, because that's what it's about, discarding it. The people who do those things to you, you can't let them own you, because that's what they want. They do these things to you, and they figure you carry them around like a nightmare, and it's like they live rent-free in your head. And you give them that if you allow their actions to be the actions that lead you to be who you are, that they wanted you to be, and not really who you are. And you can just say, screw that. You know what? You don't have rent in my head. You're not going to control my life. You're not going to control me. What you did was wrong. You're the one who has to live with that, not me. I can accept the reality that this is wrong, and I can change myself and go forward and be somebody better, somebody more in line, and somebody righteously in the eyes of God who God wanted me to be. And you can do that. That's your power that no one can take from you. You can do that, no matter who you are. I watched a video the other night about a kid who was inspired by the whole Charlie Kirk incident. And he said, you know what, I realized I made a mistake. I'm not gay anymore. It was a mistake. I was confused, and I'm going to correct this, and I'm going to go on, and I'm going to be a minister for God. I'm going to be like Charlie Kirk. I'm going to explain my story to people and help people who are confused come to their own reality. And I thought, wow, that's great. And understand, that's your greatness right now. To each and every one of you kids in college, every one of you high school kids going through this and you're confused, understand the people around you, the only reason they're encouraging you, the teachers and what have you, because they're sick. These are very disturbed, evil, disgraceful people. You know, when you look at things of what they're giving you for examples, I had one kid tell me where he was showing me for an example of this movie actress who had children, that she had 2 children that were transgender children. And the one thing that kid didn't understand was, no, that wasn't her children. She adopted them for her agenda, to use those kids, to put them in that situation, to try and make it appear it was okay. That's sick. That's insane. And that's the problem I can remember back years ago, where I advocated against anyone in the LGBTQ community having the ability to adopt children. Because this is what we see going on with many of these people who adopted these children. This is what they're doing to them today. And it's very, very sad. I can't even imagine being one of the kids who is in an adoption agency, rejected for some reason by your own parents, and then handed over to somebody now who you believe is going to be your family, and then they tell you you're not really who you are, and they don't accept you for who you really are, and want to change you into something you're not. Talk about insane, more like mental abuse. That's just insane, and is happening. But, you know, this is the thing I just wanted to get out to you kids about inherent memory and the importance of understanding it, because it's a real thing. If you're a boy and you think you're a girl, it's not really. It's not. You're just inherent memory. You're drawing on that of your mother's inherent memory. If you feel feminine, you're drawing on your mother's memory. If you find yourself attracted to a man, look at your father. Look back at possibly if you could find old high school pictures of your mother's boyfriend. Guarantee you, if you're a boy and you're attracted to a man, and you find out what your mom's old boyfriends look like, or your father when he was younger, you're going to realize that's her attraction, not yours. You just inherited that memory from your mother. You inherited that trait from your mother. It's not you. You're a boy. You need to now try to focus your energy toward grasping at your father, the masculine, the manly thing within you, because that's what you are. You're just confused. And you can, it's okay. It happens. It's okay. Also, you know, there's the thing, like I remember in the city growing up, we used to have what we called the chicken area. That was where all the crazy, these Democrats all went, the bunch of perverted, sick pigs they are. They would go and prey on the heroin addicted mothers, trying to give them drug money so they can molest their children and what have you. And, you know, it was also something, you know, because like you could say not all gay people are pedophiles, but all pedophiles are definitely gay. They'll molest either boy or girl. They don't care. And I can remember boys that in the city, when they would hit around puberty, they would go and, you know, the gays down there, they would pay money to be able to do things with them. And they would take the money just to get the rocks off, you know. And that's what it was about. But, you know, it's just not right. It's not right. And in the city, a lot of people, like I say, you just don't have that moral values of family directing you and giving you and instilling in you principles and values. So you can easily, those kids fall into it so easy if you don't have a proper upbringing of a family that instills in you good values and principles. My mom was a very God-fearing woman. She prayed every night. We spoke often about God. I've had my long trace as a kid, a stint of trying to understand God, and I had to come about a relationship with God very weirdly. And I had my stint when I was a young teenager where I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. After studying so many things, realized not everybody could be right, what have you. My understanding of coming to the truth of Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior and God was when I told my mother I was atheist, and she cried. And she was so scared, and I could tell she was like really scared. I wasn't even expecting this response from her. She had trembling, and where, you know, it was like she lost me. And I remember that's kind of like what she said to me. Oh my God, you're going to go to hell, you know. And I was like, Mom, I'm not going to go to hell. There is no hell. There is no heaven. There is no God. I thought I knew everything. And my mom said to me, I'll tell you what we'll do. She said, I'm going to tell you this. If you believe there's no God, that's okay. But you have to prove it to me. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, if you believe there's no God, then you must have evidence that God doesn't exist. I want you to get that evidence, because she knew me as a kid. I was a very inquisitive kid. I was digging up information about everything. I was just always out trying to learn something. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. I can prove it. And I thought it was going to be easy. Well, it wound up, I proved to myself I was wrong, and there was a God. And that's how Charlie Kirk was, and that's how I am, and that's how most people who followed him and most conservative Republican Christians are. You know, we come to a point in life where we realize there's a lot of things in life when I was younger I believed, and a lot of things I wanted the world to be like, and I thought I was right. But when I would do the due diligence and look into the facts and realize the facts say I'm wrong, the facts say my view, my opinion is wrong, and in the eyes of God and by the laws of nature, it's wrong, I have the ability to accept that. I have the ability to accept that I'm wrong. I have the ability to understand I'm a man, I'm human, I make mistakes, I'm not righteous, I'm not God, I'm wrong. And I can confess those wrongs to God and ask for forgiveness and further wisdom and direction to be right going forward and not make mistakes anymore in relation to anything that I discover I'm wrong about. And so can you. So can every one of you. That's the thing with a mistake. It's in the past. And it's only a great sin when you keep making it and you know you're making it. You see, Christ, when he's seen people, he told them, you know, like with Mary Magdalene, when he had accepted her prayer for forgiveness, and he said to her, sin no more. You know, that's it. That's all you got to do. And if, you know, some people say, well, what if you slip up? And, well, that can happen too. We're human. It can happen. But you know what? You got to come to the realization of the dangers of it. You know, and that's what you learn when you start to learn about Jesus and you really indulge into what Christ was about. It becomes really hard because it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes being grounded in total reality, because it's real. The truth is the only thing of all things real, and that's what it's about, the truth. You know, I'm not a perfect man. I never claimed to be a perfect man. But you know, I thrive to be a better man every day. I thrive to be a better example to humanity every day. You know, I've come from, if you knew anybody who knows me, that knew me when I was younger, like my nieces, my nephews, whatever, they remember, you know, badass, tough Uncle Jim who just was always in trouble and doing whatever. And it's, you know, they look at me now and they're like, wow, you know, what happened? What happened was I found God, you know, really. I can remember being younger, my one middle sister found God. And, you know, I can remember watching people make fun of her, and that was one of my, even back then, like I wasn't as understanding as I am now as a child, and I just laughed with them, you know. But now when I look at her and I realize her faith reflects on me and my other sister, who's my youngest sister. I'm the youngest in the family, but she's a little older than me, but she's the youngest girl in our family. And I look at us and I realize that our growth in Christ is a reflection from our middle sister and my mom, because my mom every night prayed for us all. When I remember being a little kid mimicking my mom, kneeling down next to her, not even knowing what I was doing, and I would just sit there and listen to her mention the names of everyone that I knew I loved and that loved me, all my family, and she was praying for them. And my mom always believed strongly in God. And, you know, that was a thing that when you see it, it becomes inherent in you. And eventually, no matter how bad the world is to you, and believe me, the world's been bad to me. I've seen a lot of ugly. You would not, you know, to me, it's not so much ugly, but I know when I tell people stories about things that happened in my life, they're like, oh my God. You know, and I say to them, look, I know it seems dramatic, but when you grow up that way and it's constant around you, it's normal. And it doesn't affect you as you would think it would affect you. It only affects people who are not ever been subject to it in a way where it's traumatizing. So, you know, and I'm telling you, you kids in college, you kids in high school that have been indoctrinated, you know, Charlie Kirk wanted to reach you and I want to reach you, because I know one thing. The people in life that I have encountered that was part of the LGBTQ, which I even have some and family members that are, and I wish I could reach them and get them to understand what I'm saying on the inherent memory part, because that's where it comes from. And I know from speaking with them and what they said to me, it's inherent from their mother's side. I know this for a fact. And, you know, and it's like many students, kids in school, or people I knew from the church that I would talk to. After talking with them for a while, just like having some kind of conversation and talk about how it happened, where it came about, eventually, like, the conversation leads to, hey, right, is that not like, you know, and then even sometimes we'd call the mother or the father, and I would ask them questions, and I have him on speakerphone, and he would answer them honestly, and we'd be like, and then it's kind of like the bell goes off, and you realize you're just making a big mistake, and it's something so simple that these people could tell you, but they're so evil in nature. These sick, perverted, pedophile people at the schools that want to prey on you are so sick and inhumane. Rather than tell you the truth and help you find your balance and understand where you're confused, they would rather keep you confused and take advantage of you and watch you destroy your life. Don't let them do it. Don't let them do it. And understand, any mistake you made, any mistake you already made, can be undone. And you can become a strong, bold advocate that can change other people's lives, and sharing with them how you made that mistake and how you corrected it. Believe me, Jesus is real. God is real. If you just find the faith, just find the faith for a moment. Go somewhere quiet like I am right now. Like, you know, I'm talking to you. And you don't even have to have anybody involved. Just go somewhere quiet and talk to God. Just reach out to God and feel it. Because that's what it is, a feeling that will give you power over yourself. Because you're God's. And when you accept who you are that God made you to be, he can give you the power to control yourself and be who you are. And you will awaken. You will awaken. And you'll be fine. You'll be fine. You can change your life into what it really should be, because you'll be who you really are in that life. And that life, from that point forward, could be amazing. It will be amazing. Trust me, I swear, if you just try. You know, but with that, I'm just going to say, you know, that's what I wanted to say, and I want to share with the parents and the kids going through this about inherent memory. I remember studying about these things for a long time and seeing it's there in ancient history. It used to be a foundational thing in the 40s and 50s in psychology. Hell, it was something that was being taught back in even the 1800s and 1700s in colleges like in England and London and stuff. But, you know, some of these things were also being taken out because the elitists of government around the world that are not like America did not want people, they considered that privilege and knowledge. Because if everybody is aware of these things, then it's real hard for a dictator or a totalitarian elitist scumbag like a king or a monarchy to use that knowledge against you, to make you confound and wreck and ruin your own life. Because that's what it's about. Once they trap you into it, they use it against you. What will your parents think? Are you really gonna, you know, you know, they're not gonna accept you. But that's not true. That's not true. They can't accept you for who you're not, but they can accept you for who you really are. They can accept you for who they've known you to be all your life, that they raised you to be. They can accept you. And once you accept you for that, believe me, your life is back on track. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. So I'm going to pray for all of you kids. I'm going to pray for all of you. I'm even, you know, I look at some of you right now and I realize you kids who are out there making these videos, cursing Charlie Kirk, condemning him, bashing him, you're so angry because what Charlie Kirk was doing was telling you the truth, the same as I'm doing right now, and trying to lead you back to finding out the great person you are that God made you to be. And you're just so trapped in feeling that you've done so much damage to yourself and you've made so many mistakes, and you fear the loss of all the people who supported you in it, that you have to go and do this thing because you want to believe the lie more than the truth. But even for you, I tell you right now, I'm praying. I'm praying that you as well go somewhere quiet. Put that evil out of yourself. He was a good man. And just pray and ask God. Ask God to lift the evil from you and find yourself. Because I can't believe that God could make anybody as evil as what you kids are appearing. That's an evil that's been put in you by sick, perverted, inhumane people who are, those people, there are some people, that's why God created a hell. There are some people beyond redeeming. That's why God made a hell. There is a place for people who are unredeemable. And the majority of those within the heads of the Democratic establishment right now are those people. They are inhumane, disgraceful, sick, perverted, evil, godless people. And right now, with them even trying to capitalize on these things, it's ridiculous. But that's a whole nother video. But right now, I just hope, and I want and hope, for the sake of Charlie Kirk and all he tried to do, and which I know Erica Kirk is going to continue doing. You know, it's just a sad thing, and to her, same. You know, think of him right now with Jesus looking down and realizing what a fire's been lit around the world because of the sacrifice made of him. I know, I can't even imagine your pain. I've lost people I love. I can't imagine your pain. I've never had, I really don't know to this day, anybody that loves me unconditionally besides maybe my two sisters I have. You know, I have family I know loves me like family, but like to have a person that's not family that loves you, unconditional, would give their life for you. I don't know what that's like. But Erica Kirk had that with Charlie, and he had that with her. And that right there is an immense, priceless gift to have in this ugly world that we live in today. But this world doesn't have to be this ugly if we all find our way to the truth of who we all really are. That's it. That's all I want to say. I hope I reach somebody. I hope, and like I say too, I'll just leave this out there. Any kid that's transgender, gay, or whatever you're going through, look, I have a message box there. If you want to talk, message me. Okay? Message me. If I don't know the answers, I'll find somebody who does. But I can tell you one thing. I'll share some stories with you about shit I've been through. And you'll realize there ain't nothing you can't undo. You just got to have faith. You do understand. I remember, it sounds kind of cliche and corny, but it's the truth. I was in a deep state of meditation one time, and in that state I wanted to know. I became aware that I was like in a dream state. And I thought, wow, this is probably the place where God could hear me most. And and I said, I want to know how God came to be. And I heard a voice in this dream state said to me, God was simply faith in nothing, that something could be, and from him all things are. And in the process of elimination, when I came out of it and I thought about the process of elimination, you get to the point of when the first thing ever was, you eliminate that and there's true nothing. It's true. God is faith. And see how powerful it is, because everything that we visually see, everything that is, all is from that faith. Again, with that, that's all I'm going to say. I pray for our country. I pray for Charlie Kirk's. My condolences out to Erica Kirk and her kids. I'm praying for them all. I'm praying for our country. I'm praying for our government. I'm praying for our president. I'm praying for all the people I know in my family who I love so much and I miss so much. I wish my life itself wasn't in such turmoil and where I had more free time and everything to be able to come and see you and things were like it used to be, but it's a long road back. I'll just keep pushing forward. Thanks everybody for your time. I hope everybody has a great night, and I'm praying for you.